Congress, of course, could act almost immediately to help solve this problem. Obviously, it would require the signature of the president. Instead, they're busy with business as usual, and that mostly involves looking out for themselves and running for re-election. Nowhere is this more evident than how they cash in on stocks using insider information. Not only do they face no punishment, it's allowed. Again, this is not partisan. The fact is, Republicans and Democrats abuse the system equally. Bipartisan agreement in Washington. Congratulations. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi refuses to call a vote on a bill that would bar lawmakers from trading stocks while in office. Seems like a no-brainer, especially because there is a long list, about 100 members long, of questionable trades by members of Congress or their relatives. Congressman Alan Lowenthal's wife sold Boeing shares a day before a damaging report about deadly crashes involving Boeing planes. Speaker Pelosi's husband sold NVIDIA stock just days before Congress placed restrictions on the manufacturer. Senator Tommy Tuberville bought and sold cattle contracts while sitting on the Agriculture Committee, which was holding discussions about, you guessed it, the cattle market. At the bottom of this graphic, you will notice the net worth of all three lawmakers. They are worth a boatload of money. Perhaps that's because they're able to use their positions of power to time the market and trade stocks at exactly the right time. For everybody else, that's called insider trading. It is illegal. But don't worry. Speaker Pelosi says that she plans to even the playing field sometime soon. Stay tuned. Chris Hahn is here, host of the Aggressive Progressive podcast. Chris, I hate doing these stories in the sense that you almost give hope to people that Congress might one time, sometime in their history, play by the same rules the rest of us have to.
This story has been going on for a long time,
Yeah.
Leland. This is not the first time I've talked about this. This is not the first decade or century that I've talked about this. This is a problem that Congress should rectify. There are people on both sides of the aisle that have tried to do it. Generally speaking, the other party tries when the current party's in power, but they can't get their own members to go along, which is pitiful, frankly. I think Congress should play by the same rules as everybody else when it comes to stock trading.
Yeah, but they don't, and they won't. What I thought was interesting is Nancy Pelosi, when this sort of first came up as an issue, basically said as much. There shouldn't be restrictions. Take a listen.
This is a free market, and people, we are a free market economy. They should be able to participate in that.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess they think that these hearings are open to the public and people could watch them. I don't know. I've watched a lot of congressional hearings in my day, man. This show is a lot more exciting, even when I don't agree with you. So it's very difficult. But look, the insider trading rules should be applied to everybody.
Right. But look, we can all agree that it's not fair that Congress gets to do this, right? It's not fair to the shareholders. It's not fair to the people who work for these companies. It's not fair to their representatives because those they represent, because they're obviously at times enriching themselves rather than worried about what's best for the country. This is from the New York Times. From 2019 to 2021, 183 current senators or representatives reported a trade of stock or another financial asset by themselves or an immediate family member. 35% of Congress. 19% of trades seen as potential conflicts of interest. There's a lot of members of Congress who are beating the market and beating some big-time hedge fund managers. We can all agree it's not fair.
Right.
Should we agree that it's just not going to change? Or are we asking too much?
Here's the problem with corruption stories. The American people think that all elected officials are corrupt. I don't believe that. I think there are a lot of corrupt elected officials, but I don't think all of them are. I think most of them are not. And if you want the law to apply evenly across the board, if you're upset about the former president breaking the law every single day, Congress needs to do things to hold themselves accountable to laws that, at least right now, look, they're not breaking the law, but there is an appearance of impropriety. The American people, though, just think that comes with the trade, unfortunately.
You can almost say the soft bigotry of low expectations, and you consider some of the people who are there were probably right to have pretty low expectations. Chris, it's good to see you, my friend. Thank you.
Nice to see you, too.
Yeah. All right. Thanks for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to subscribe. Click the red button to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.